Hello, my name is Owen, and welcome to a quick review of Douglas Adams' The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. What I want to do is give a brief overview of the books, about tell you things that I liked and tell you the things that I didn't like. What I'm holding right here is the Ultimate Edition, which has all 5 novels in the series in one. We're just reviewing the main one, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And if you're like me, you've heard of it, before you read it, you had no idea what it was about. I know the meaning of the universe is 42. What that means, I had not a clue. But I knew that it was comedic. I knew that people really loved it. I knew that millions of people loved this book, but I wanted to give it a chance myself. And I was in the mood for a shorter story, something to break up the pace of life. For those of you that don't know, it's about basically a character named Arthur, and his house is going to be demolished because they're going to build a freeway where his house is. Then the Earth gets demolished because they're going to build an intergalactic freeway. So a little bit of irony there. With that as the setup, I pictured like a kind of like a commentary on Earth using space and stuff like that. And there is a little bit of that, but it's really just like a comedy. It's just a comedy of this guy who gets taken into space and goes on an intergalactic adventure. I think it was interesting. I quite frankly, if I'm being upfront, I thought it was humorous, not funny. A friend of mine recently explained to me the difference. It's humorous in where it's like, oh, that's quite clever. It's not like funny, haha, laugh out loud funny, in my opinion. I think it's really hard for a book to be laugh out loud funny. And when people always say like, oh, like I was literally ha-ha-haing out loud, I'm like, you're kind of a psychopath. Because you read words on a page realistically fairly slowly. I feel like I need a little bit of like a jump to like get me to like laugh. And that only comes with like real life talking. But I thought it was quite clever. There's a lot of like humorous moments, like just like the setup, right? With like, oh, we're going to demolish your house for a freeway, real life, right? We're going to demolish the Earth for an intergalactic freeway. Oh, that's clever. That's clever that would happen in like the space government and stuff like that. And it's just constant clever wordplay, clever like scenario setups with like this intergalactic world where basically, because the universe is like infinite, there's like infinite amount of gags and funny things that Adams can do with this world. And he does not shy away from making a joke at every single opportunity. And in fact, the only complaint I guess I would have is that it's a comedy first, and the story like really had no impact whatsoever. I didn't, quite frankly, I don't think I got it. I don't think I get it. I thought it was clever. I thought it was humorous. I thought it was an easy read. It's a really short, in this volume, it's like 120 pages. Breezed by it, and because it's so humorous, I read it fairly fast. But I guess I don't get why people are obsessed with this specific entry in the series. Because people say it's the best one in the series. People say I read reviews where it's like I memorized entire passages of it, and I struggled to find any of those passages of like humor that like really hit me on a deep level. Like I'm thinking of like Terry Pratchett, right? Where I read like Mort and I read Guards, and while I wasn't in love with those books like a lot of people are, there were passages that still in my like head years later, like I remember that bit, I remember that gag, and like there was like an underlying like emotional core in those books that I read. I struggled to find it. I struggled to find like the deeper meaning behind like some of like his witty commentary on humanity and in this fictional universe that he created. And overall, it just made me think it's fun. It's fun. I don't understand why people love it. And maybe it's just because it's one of those pieces of work where it's influenced so much of comedy and maybe even like humorous sci-fi that's just ingrained in our society. That like I'm looking at the blueprint perhaps, because I believe that I know it started out as like a radio show and they made it into the books, and I believe it came out around the 80s, right? And it's definitely, you could see the inspirations on modern comedy and some like modern sci-fi aspects in like modern day works. Like you think of like, it reminded me a little bit like of like Rick and Morty, right? The fact that they do like, oh, wacky sci-fi bits. I would be you'd be hard pressed to be able to convince me that Rick and Morty and the whole visual comedic style of like, oh, like we're gonna cut to like this really wacky alien thing that's like really funny, isn't directly influenced by something like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, where it's like the universe is infinite. It's infinite in its wackiness and infinite in the creative possibilities we could come up with. And even like shows like Family Guy, right, where it's like, oh, like cutaway gags. There's a little bit of that. It's not necessarily like cutaway in this book, but it's like you're following Arthur and he's like an Earthman, like, oh, I'm in space, like what's going on here? Cut to like, oh, what if a robot was really depressed? And how funny would that be if his personality was like a depressed human? And like he's like a robot with like infinite smarts, but it's like he's just so depressed that like he talks to another robot and then the robot kills himself. It's like, what? That's insane. And it's kind of funny. But not to say it's like, when I'm comparing it to like Family Guy and Rick and Morty, like those shows are a little bit like raunchy and like they go for like shock value. This isn't that kind of humor at all. I'm just saying like, in terms of like cutawayness and like using clever humor, like play on words, using what you know about the world and people and kind of flipping it on its head. Adams was very, very deliberate in that sense. He definitely knows how to craft a joke, definitely knows how to craft like a humorous scenario. But I just think, just to tie it back to what I said earlier, it's lacking that emotional through line, I guess, or a theme, perhaps, that would make me love this book. Glad I read it. Like I said, it was an easy read. It was a fun read, but I don't get why people worship this book, I guess. And maybe it's just because I've seen so much work of people that have been inspired by this book that to me it seems like, okay. Because I could definitely see why its comedy is so impactful. But other than that, it was fun. So if you like comedy and you like sci-fi, I think you'd be hard-pressed to find anything wrong with it. It's just, maybe it's not the end-all be-all. And maybe I'm just missing something, guys. So for those of you that really love this book, I am genuinely curious what you find on it. Because I could also see, because there's so many jokes, because there's so many bits that on a reread, I'm sure there's some that I missed, some clever word plays that I just brushed over because it is so dense. It's every page has a joke, every page has a word play, and in 120 pages of that's a lot of jokes, and I could see me missing some for sure. But people that really love this book, let me know what you love about it, and I'm going to continue read the rest of the volumes because it was so easy and it was refreshing, honestly. It was a great change of pace from what I normally read, and overall, it was a fun time. Be sure to like and subscribe if you like this review, and don't forget to comment, because I told you to comment if you like the series. Sometimes you guys don't comment, sometimes you do comment. What does that say about you? I'm just saying, if you're really cool, you would have commented. And if you haven't, maybe you should feel that little guilt, that little twinge in your stomach that, oh, why didn't I? You know what I mean? And to answer your question, yes, because I know you've been asking it since the very beginning, I did get a haircut. I did get a haircut. But thanks for sticking around.